Coin traders, how we doing? Thanks for joining me for the show, looking at Celestia TIA on that ticker. Haven't looked at this since about the end of June, so lots to cover pretty much, especially after several months of more or less just down sideways trading and accumulation of that zone. But now we're actually looking at a pretty nice potential setup. Obviously, in this instance where we had extremely nice upside move, we were set up pretty nice. A little bit of this downside action correlated with the rest of the crypto space, and unfortunately did break a pretty big level that we were hoping for. So ever since we did have our big pullback here, bearish conditions for the exponential moving averages where we had 50 on top, we had the 26 and then the 12 on bottom. So we haven't really ever seen this be fully flipped back into the bullish cycle or the bullish setup and formation here until just recently. But big news now, still looking to hopefully maintain that on the current candle setup. However, since we did pull back now below this big zone of exponential moving average support, since it did flip, back test confirmed it as support, and then ultimately we ended up losing that. Extremely bad setup. Don't like seeing that at all, because typically when we do top out these previous highs, make a new trend higher high, we do want to pull back, confirm these, especially once again as that nice support, especially since if we do want to look out here, we can see that they have more or less been pretty big guides for resistance here on this daily. So ever since we do flip it and back test it into support, did want to maintain that, but obviously didn't happen right now. So what we're looking at is resistance on several key factors here. One of the big levels that we're looking at on the current daily candle here is up overhead at a price level 534. In addition to that, that lines up perfectly with where these exponential moving averages are right now. And so if we actually go ahead and zoom in here on the current candle setup, you can see that we have been looking pretty resistive on this level for about the last 6-7 days. So about the last week or so, as you can see, we were looking at big resistance ever since pulling back below this level. Huge upside wick on the candle that just closed. Obviously, with crypto being a continuous 24-hour cycle, it's not necessarily as relevant since a lot of this is continuation. But right now, looking at the potential for seeing an upside move break above that. So if we get the current candle to break above 534, effectively 535 and 536 especially, would be an extremely nice solid move. Because one of the things we're looking at right now on the current candle is the EMA 12 coming in at 537 too. So if we do break above that, great sign as well. Currently priced at 541 right now. Below the 12-period EMA is the EMA 26 coming in at 535.5, and below that at the EMA 50 at 534.8. So as you can see, extremely big resistive zone here, not only for EMA support, but as well as previous level of price closing support here that did ultimately break. Now, if we do look at the volume here and overall look at how the volume's impacted, we actually had the biggest amount of sell pressure here on this move prior to setting the most recent trend high. Coming in trend high right now, we are looking at a price high of 690. But yeah, so more or less ever since this big sell-off candle here right before this extremely large magnitude candle after we backtested and confirmed these EMAs as that support, that's actually when we saw the biggest amount of sell pressure volume come in. For volume, we were looking at 3.538 million. And ever since then have been looking at pretty much an overall decline, especially on this bounce after setting this higher trend low, looking at an upside move, but extremely minimal volume. So the most recent bearish candle we had looking at 683.385 thousand. So a lot less. And right now you can see we are starting to look at a little bit of higher highs in a volume coming in. Obviously had a little bit on this instance, but we know that a lot of it, especially with this big upper wick, was some selling pressure as well. But hopefully the rest of the crypto space can stay bullish and actually rub off, because if we do break, form that close, it's pretty much going to be back in track and service, especially after a higher low coming off of this trend low here, which was at 372. But like we mentioned, plenty of upside resistances up overhead for Celestia here, because not only are we breaking and fighting these exponential moving averages, that we're still trying to maintain this nice bullish formation here on breaking this previous level of support. But if we do look left, plenty of big resistances here still to go before actually topping out the most current trend high to form that new higher high on that trend. So do actually want to zoom out here now on this daily chart and talk about VPVR, volume profile visible range, which does show the volume based on price level instead of down by time like we have on the bottom here. So what we're looking at, especially since on the launch, we had a very short time and window of a huge run up for Celestia. Obviously a lot longer of a time period to pull back, consolidate now. finally in this accumulation stage where more or less we have been sitting sideways pretty much ever since the middle of June, basically about the last time we have touched Celestia. So bounce off multiple levels. We had a bounce, a lower low, finally breaking that, now setting a higher low. So now one of the great things about the current price level and the setup right now is that if we actually draw a support line coming in at 453, we're looking at big levels of support here prior to breaking it, establishing it as resistance, finally breaking it bullish, back testing it as support once again, and then now confirming it and back testing it. So continuation would be essential, but the thing I want to draw and look at with the VPVR over here is that typically this is a good guide for a lot of resistance or at least consolidation to happen, because it does mean a lot more struggle points based on previous trade history here. And so essentially this does mean a lot of resistance going up overhead, pretty much right around to the $7 level. So if we can actually break that, it'll be an extremely good sign, and it will be breaking out of this longer term consolidation and accumulation bottom here. But this is an overall good bottom signal for this setup for Celestia, especially when we do have a lot more bullish indicators coming in, like setting a new higher high as well as a bullish setup in formation on these exponential moving averages, and especially if we can get a little bit more follow through in this current move to maintain that bullish setup in formation, extremely good and bullish sign. Otherwise, that will be looking at a little rejection and probably running down to test this low below the $4 mark once again. Hopefully that's not what happens, but we aren't in the business of hoping, wishing, praying, or predicting. We're in the business of reacting after analyzing. But since we are talking about a little bit of bullish scenarios, what would be an extremely nice and bullish setup right now is if we did see a very nice spike with volume come in, blow through the $7 level, and actually push prices up to the next level of previous support history that was confirmed flipped into resistance. So that price is pretty much going to come in right around the 8.25 mark. So if we could see prices run up to that level, back test, and then actually confirm about the $7 psychological mark as well, that would be a very nice bullish setup for continuation of the upside and pretty much the chance of a reversal and setting new trend lows at that point. Longer term trend lows anyway will actually be extremely minimized, and pretty much we will have the ball very much in the bull's court for longer term upside movements. So now, since we talked about a change in structure for the longer term, do you want to actually pull up the weekly chart here that we're looking at right now, because several good things are happening. So not only did we actually break this level, this trend line for price level resistance on the downside and confirmed it, back tested it as support, still a great sign, but also especially recently we are looking at a nice bullish cross and break on top of the 12 period EMA. And as you can see, the last two times that we did have a test of the 12 period, it did maintain and hold resistance, pushing price back down again. So the fact that we are still seeing a close on top of it despite the last week here breaking back bearish below it in the current week, kind of getting stuck up as resistance. What we'd love to see is, again, another run up in a test and probably another test of this 26 period EMA. Obviously, if you look at the chart, 50 period EMA is just getting started for how new Celestia is, but last time we did see a run up of the 26 period EMA, big rejection off of that, and then setting new lower lows on the trend for Celestia. But what I do really like about this weekly chart too, especially if we talk about volume, is here on this pullback, we didn't even set our lower low yet. We did have a peak increase in bearish volume, which still not necessarily that strong, yet did pull back. Volume did taper off after that. But now on the three most recent candles, even despite having these big upside wicks that pretty much extend over the size of the magnitude of the body, would have loved a little bit more solid body, but the fact that we did have week over week increasing a bullish volume here, like we saw, and this did culminate with 19.447. So about one of the most that we've actually seen for Celestia, especially since the launch, where we were actually getting decreasing bullish volume coming off of the all-time high right now. So still a very good sign, especially if that does continue. And again, especially now breaking the trend, setting higher lows, and potentially looking at topping and breaking some of these resistances. Would love to ultimately flip the EMAs on this chart as well. But since this is the weekly chart, we know that it is going to take several weeks before we actually do see a complete bullish cross here in that overall setup. So now, do you want to look at the technicals here, specifically look at the RSI Relative Strength Index, because what's notable about this, you see this yellow line here on the screen, that is the moving average for the RSI here. Every single time we did have a bounce, pretty much got rejected right below this exponential moving average, And so pretty much we know that this was a very nice resistance point to the downside, but we actually saw the RSI stabilize pretty much right around the 40 line. And then we did get this nice bullish break. That was right when we saw our increasing bullish volume week over weeks. And now starting to pull back and still in a bullish setup where we are path of least resistance for the RSI to the upside on top of the RSI exponential moving average. So typically we do look at this as a little bit more of a bullish sign, especially if we can maintain that. So as long as the exponential moving average for this RSI does still stay below the RSI itself, that'll be a much more bullish indicator and sign of upside direction here heading into this trend. Now, in addition to that, we know that the MACD is a little bit more of a laggy indicator, but we did have a nice bullish cross here on the MACD, where the MACD did cross over the signal line, and also histogram bars all are back now in the bullish side as well. So price approaching the exponential moving averages, MACD cross, bullish cross on the RSI. A lot of great things here setting up for this longer term weekly chart here for Celestia. Jumping down now into the 4-hour shorter term chart really quick before we wrap up, just to talk about what does potentially lie ahead, especially now. So what we're looking at right now after this pullback, like we said, to establish that higher low, is a little bit more of that upside direction. And we know that since these did cross bearish, we did have a resistance point come in, break, confirm as support, and then now another back test confirming support. So hopefully over the next couple of candles, we can print a little bit more bullish candles, maintain a lot of that support after confirming it as that big, nice region, especially after coming here, setting a high, higher low, and then coming back and then putting in another higher high here on this trend. So setting up a very nice uptrend right now, does pretty much confirm this as the bottom, which does set up for a longer term higher low here. So confirming that now, again, like we said, do need to run up and actually see a break of about $7.75 all the way up to potentially the $7 level would be a very nice upside run. And so from current price points up to that $7 mark would potentially be about a 30% gain to the upside. Not much in crypto land, but still nonetheless do need to see it, especially if we can still see and continue to see a lot more of that bullish increase in volume, especially along with this taper off in bearish sell pressure. So a lot of great things still for Celestia. I do think that, especially after having a long established bottom here in accumulation period, we are going to be looking at a little bit more upside. So do just continue to be patient. Don't think trading necessarily is the best option because a lot of these long-term holds potentially could be great. So right now, from the potential price of 541 all the way up to the current all-time high right now, almost a 300%, which would be about a 4x return from current prices. Nothing is financial advice, of course, but definitely nice long-term entries. And yeah, with a little bit more minimized risk from such a long accumulation period here. But yeah, so with that, that actually is going to go ahead and wrap up our show for today on Celestia. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button if you have not done so just yet. As always, make sure to drop a note down in the comment sections below. Questions, comments, issues, predictions, all that good fun stuff. Do love getting back to each and every one of you. Feel free to drop me a follow over on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. At @coin_trades is the handle over there. Do look forward to chatting with each and every one of you. That is going to do it for now, though. So stay safe, take care, coin traders, and I'll catch you back in the next video.